Get. Okay, we're officially beginning the EM 2024 STARS volunteers technical meeting office hours before the actual training. This is being recorded for future prosperity and people can refer back to this. And I wanted to start us off with Hannah giving a quick announcement.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Dar. We have had a message from some meteorologists that are going to be speaking to people on local news, that kind of thing, looking for our volunteers who are going to be in the field, taking photographs, etc., in the path of totality. They'd like to interview you guys. Now, as I'm sure you can imagine, they've had a few instances of pretty green volunteers who show up who have never done an interview before, never been on TV before, that kind of thing. So they did stipulate that they would appreciate only hearing about people that are comfortable giving an interview and people who have experience giving that kind of interview. So if you feel that this is something you'd like to do, you'd like to help these meteorologists out, talk to them about your experience, I'm going to put my information in the chat. So the chat is included with the recording, I think, Dar. She's nodding. That tells me yes. So my information will be in the chat. I have some people reaching out to me already, which is fantastic. And it's probably going to be based on where you're going to be for the eclipse. So keep that in mind. Thank you so much in advance. We really appreciate not only that you guys volunteer with us, first of all, but also that you're so willing and so ready to help really anybody who asks for it. This is the citizen science. There's a few ways citizen science can go, right? It's people in lab coats in the field, or it's a community coming together. And I've seen a community coming together here, and it's really been just quite a spectacle to see. So into the chat goes my personal information. Just my email. If you want to be, oops, nope. If you want to
Yeah, you want to do that to everyone. You just send something to me directly.
it's been that kind of day.
Yeah.
If you are open to being interviewed, shoot me an email, let me know. Thank you, Dar, for reminding me about that. Okay, so we have some questions that have already been submitted. Let's see. If you guys are comfortable with the Q&A style or the Q&A function on Zoom, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to submit them there. We will work on getting you answers. Laura should join us in a few minutes, but she had a deadline to meet, as is becoming more and more and more common as we get closer and closer and closer to the eclipse. So yeah, but we have a great place to start, and I can share my screen. Do, 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 do.
Right. And by the way, I really appreciate the science team going and adjusting the photography guide on the fly. So that's absolutely wonderful.
No, it's so important. And we're here for you guys, and so we bring the science to the table, but you guys are bringing the photography to the table, truly. So this was never going to be about one side of the table knowing more than the other side. It was going to be about collaboration and working together. So we are thankful for you not only pointing these things out, but being able to work with us on getting these guides updated. So,
oh boy, those questions look familiar to me. I
yeah.
wonder who posed them.
I bet. So these are all of them that I have. And then, okay, Charles says that he's having trouble finding an ASCOM driver for his Nikon. You know, Charles, I've been hearing that there are some troubles with Nikon and Nina. Is that what you're talking about? Okay, that's good to know. So I think we're working on a workaround for that. We don't have anything solidified just yet, but we're going to find you something. Don't worry. ASCOM driver or not. Okay, great. Thanks. Any other questions?
I would say on the ASCOM side, I would say should reach out to the ASCOM forums online, because the guys there are really good.
Okay.
Um, there may be other people who are having similar issues or may have other workarounds to get it to work for them because the online forums are very active.
Okay. I think I'm looking at that now, if you guys can see my screen.
Uh, yes, and at least Charles, I don't know if you want to try Backyard Nikon. Uh, th there's a free version, and you can just try to see if that works to do remote shooting using Backyard Nikon, BYN.
Yeah. But I've also heard of other people having issues with other Nikons, not only in this, but for other applications,
Mm,
that when they trigger the shutter, there's a big delay between issuing the trigger and it
sure.
actually. So there may be issues with the platform, and not only ASCOM, but related to the SDKs for Nikons. I'm not sure, but
Mm,
it's not the first time I've heard issues with them.
yeah.
And Liam, that was Backyard Nikon specifically?
I know that but in general, in communicating with some of the newer models, Nikons, there
Oh,
seem to be
yes,
some
yes.
issues with them, and well, I'm not sure. I haven't tested one myself, but I use Canons because there's no issues with those. But I've heard of issues with some of the Nikons. We had a person in our astronomy club who's using Eclipse Maestro or is it Orchestrator? I can't remember which one they're using, but they are actually running into issues again communicating with a Nikon camera. And I'm using both an old model and a newer model Canon, and I have no issues whatsoever. So
Okay, that is really good to know. Randy asked if you have to use Nina. My understanding is that no, so long as you follow the Eclipse Megamovie gold standard of exposures that we're looking for. But
yeah,
yeah, feel free to jump in.
well the gold
I'm a
standard,
communication specialist.
the gold standard is the sub-seconds were really small fractions of a second, where most cameras will never do those.
Uh-huh.
So I did test it, and it rounds up to 2 decimal places. So like a 7.1, if it's 7.02 or 0697 or something like that, it'll round up to 7.1s. So it's just because the camera doesn't know how to handle those really small sub-second exposures.
Right.
An astro imaging camera probably would, but the normal DSLRs don't. They have preset exposure options that you have, so you'll probably have to find out what's the nearest to that and use those exposure settings.
Okay, so then as that pertains to the question about, are we asking you to use Nina and nothing else? I imagine so no other programs would really be able to make that happen.
No, because it's a camera limitation.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, so you need to figure out what exposure level your camera can do, and in most cases it will round it up to it anyway. That's what I found for me. It rounded it up for me, and that's on a 5D. It actually rounded up the exposure level to the nearest number, nearest whole number.
Right. And that would be an expectation from just about any manufacturer. They would
Yeah.
round out the significant digits to the closest one that they use for their software.
Mm-hmm. And I'm planning to use Eclipse Maestro for my exposure for my imaging.
Okay. And my understanding is you have to have a Mac with a pretty old operating system to do that.
Yep. Yeah, they haven't updated to the new Intel CPU, or it runs on the old Intel CPUs with a really old software version. It will not run on the new Atom based. Yeah,
M3s.
yeah.
My
He
Mac.
wants to do it, but he doesn't have the time.
I found the Set C. It's for PC. It's a free software for the Solar Eclipse.
I haven't tried that one.
I'm just trying to be familiar with it because I will set in. See. It looked like very easy to use. So set and see. But
Okay.
personally, I will use Nina. I did the test run with the script, and it took 5 minutes 38 seconds to run the Nina script that you provided. So
There's two. Which one did you run? There's one for the flats and darks, and then there's one for the actual exposures.
For the active exposure.
Okay, because I ran it. It took 4 minutes for me.
Okay, because from Nina, I can have one frame every 2 or 3 seconds. So you need to download the.
Right. So
Yeah.
some of that might have to do with communication between the camera and the computer.
Yeah.
And there's certain limitations between USB protocols. So USB 2 transmits at about 480 megabits.
Mm-hmm.
And that's under ideal conditions. You'll never ever reach those kind of speeds in actuality.
Yeah. That's why I'm exploring set and CD, save directly on the card of the camera. It's really
so
nice.
yeah, there might be I know with for testing around here, we're using a Canon Rebel SL1, which is quite old camera. Initially, we set the camera to both send the file across USB and save to the SD card. But I don't know if telling it just to save to the SD card will cause it to kind of flip out. We never really tested it that far.
Is that something we could perhaps recruit someone to test for us?
Which depends on the camera, it might. So I tested with Nina. It did download, but with the other software I'm using saves it on the local SD card, and that's what it's designed to do.
Right.
Nina expects to download. I haven't tried configuring Nina to leave it on the SD card.
It's not
Right.
possible.
I haven't found that particular setting, so maybe if you did a deep dive, you might find that setting. I've never been successful in finding it, so.
No, it's not possible. I did a research on that, and
right.
But this one, the set and see is saving directly on the SD card. Also, I will use my astronomy camera. With Nina, I don't have problem because it's a USB 3. My Canon is USB 2. I think it doesn't help.
I've got another software that I used, Eclipse Orchestrator. I used it for 2017. It runs, there's a free version that I used for 2017. I'm also going to be using it for 2024. It runs on most versions of Windows. I did 11, 10, and 2017. I forget what version we were on back then. I did download the images to the SD card on my Canon camera. There is a professional version that'll download more images, but I did a test run about a week ago, and the full gold sequence, I did it with not the optimal time, but kind of times between the exposures, and it was 2 minutes for the full series.
Okay, the orchestrator, if you want to do the images of all the events going in as well as totality, the free version can only do 2 major events. It can't, not all 7 or 8 of them, where like diamond ring, Bailey's beads, all of this kind of stuff. It'll only do 2 out of all of those functions. Whereas the paid version gives you all of that, gives you access to everything. So if you ever wanted to do the sequence, but also include like Earth Shine and all this other stuff, it has that ability, but you do not get them in the free version. And the free version only runs 1 camera. So if you're planning to run more than 1 camera, you have to pay for it.
Yeah, and the paid version, I think, is about $109.
Yeah,
So it's not
yeah.
too expensive, but there's
yeah.
a free version that works very well. Like I said, I used it for 2017 and plan to use it this time also with
Yeah.
1 camera.
Yeah, it's good software. Bill Burge, or is this Fred Burgess, or Fred Brunges is the guy who wrote it. He also is the guy who owns Daystar filters. If you've heard of Daystar solar filters, so the guy who owns that wrote that software.
And
And
it is very good. And like I said, what was I going to say? Don't remember now. Oh, it does use a timing, so it'll have some audio saying when to take your filters off, and everything's so automatic. I was able to enjoy the Eclipse and not have to worry about my photography.
yeah, both Maestro and Orchestrator are the same. They're based on events. They're triggered by the timing of C1, contact
Yeah.
1, C2, C3, C4, and so on. So if you wanted to automatically start running the sequence after, so like say 30 seconds after C1 or after C2, which is when you enter totality, and you can set that, and knowing where you are and your altitude, so you need to have a GPS ideally on your computer to get precise timing and altitude and coordinates. But it's really good. I used it in 2017 and I got fantastic images from it. See here. But it is really good. But if you go with the free version, you could probably run the sequence, but you are going to miss, you won't be able to run all of the pre and post stuff. You're going to miss a lot of those if you go with the free option.
But it is free.
But it is free. Yeah, yes. The best price is free, right?
I wrote a Nina sequence that do all the partial part, 1 frame every 15 seconds, the Bailey beats before the totality, and moon earth glow in the middle of totality, and thing like that. I wrote that for my astronomy camera, so I will get a lot of picture. But if you're interested, I can show you the sequence. Nina have a sequencer that we can program like any way we want.
Yeah, you program a start time, don't you?
Yes.
You and the sequencer you trigger a start time is when
Yes.
this is how you initialize it. It's not event based, but it's time based.
Time based, yeah. And you need to calculate the duration of the partial thing. Because Nina have a problem with noon. If you go over noon, it's hard to explain just like that in the chat, but it's why I program it with time lapse, time
Offset.
yeah, time offset from the beginning. I have a time for the beginning, but after that it's all offset. I need to count how many minutes before totality and how long the totality is and thing like that. But you do it in one time. But if you move from place to another place, you need to recompute everything.
You know,
Yeah.
I was talking to a fellow by the name of Johnny Horn who reviews stuff for Sky and Telescope on Saturday, and he told me that Nina was not a good application for what we're trying to do. He said Nina was strictly for deep sky photography, and it probably will not work for what we want to do.
I did some test run with the sun, and it followed the sun quite good. I was planning to use also a fire capture to have some guiding. It's another thing that I want to experiment because fire capture is used for planetary, and it can guide. You don't need star. You just with a planet, you can follow the planet. So that's another thing. But Nina is designed by design for deep sky, but it can be used also for the. Let's go. That's what I will use for my camera, astronomy camera, and for my Canon, I will use the little program, but maybe the little program like Set and See. I put a link in the chat for that program.
There's another one out there as well, I believe, a free one. I can't remember the name of it though. There's another Eclipse one that's based around like Eclipse Maestro.
I just want to read out loud what Laura wrote in the chat in case everyone didn't see it. Unfortunately, it is not possible with this type of project with everyone coming in with their own equipment. We got good data in 2017, and we're very close to publishing the research paper needed for it. So this time we'll have be able to get all the data we need to publish, and so that's why we're sticking with Nina. I just wanted to read that out loud so everyone can get that in the recording. Not everyone reads the chat message afterwards.
Well, and Dar, that wasn't specifically about Nina. It was just about everyone's going to be getting a different sequence of images. So when we say gold standard, what we mean is we recognize everyone has a different camera, and then Nina's, we've tested it in terms of with a solar filter and taking different brackets and using a sequence, and it works just fine. I mean, it's a software that controls a camera. Well, some of your cameras, not all of them, unfortunately. So I think a lot of us, it does. I mean, I have a Mac, so it doesn't work with my camera. So I also am going to be using an old Mac and running Eclipse Maestro. So really the point is to get the sequences. And some of you are just programming them into your camera and getting them that way. So I think,
it's also a really good time to say that we have a spectrum of experienced volunteers. Some volunteers, like myself, this is my first ever eclipse that I'm going to see, let alone photograph. So for people like me, having something like Nina where I can put in all the information ahead of time and just click go, that is going to be priceless, because then I can also just watch the eclipse itself happen. So, and this is also a good time, I think, to say that we're going to be scheduling some social hours so that we can get together and have kind of conversations like this. We can talk about, experiences. We can talk about research we've been doing here and there, but it's also going to be social and fun. But this, unfortunately, I do want to make sure that we keep this time, because we're at about 27 minutes until we start the volunteer meeting when we start our training. So I want to make sure that we answer as many questions as possible too.
I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
Are we going to get trained on the AI system you're using for auto stacking and alignment?
That's a good question. I don't know that there's no training planned. That's going to be up to our science team, our machine learning team, but we'll keep you updated for sure.
The reason why I'm asking is, like, I do stacking and I do the HDR rendering. I can see the image behind me, but I'm sure with the exposures you're doing in the AI, it might be able to draw out some information that we can leverage to enhance the normal imaging that we are going to do. And it'd be nice to be able to extract that data and merge it into what we're already doing.
Oh, neat.
So
Yeah.
that's why I'd like to have, if we can get some training on how to use it. I know you're using an AI of some form. It'd be
Okay.
nice to be able to leverage that power, that experience and that processing. Like I have machines I can run it on. I just need to know how to set it up and how you use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you do me a favor and type that in the form of a question into the chat, and I'll copy it and get it into this document, and then we'll keep it in mind as we move forward, because I have the short-term memory of a goldfish, unfortunately.
I know how you feel.
All right, I
Mine's
want to
actually a
call.
mosquito, so.
All right, I want to call attention to the first Q&A that's been on the list for quite a while. Zoe's question about what is the weight limitation for the 3D mount? Their combined weight is 7.2 pounds. Can anyone answer that question?
I haven't tested the weight on it yet.
So Jeffrey's done a lot of testing with the mount. Jeffrey, can you?
I can only say with the equipment that we have, which is I believe the camera and lens is about 2.5 pounds.
Yeah, so the summary statement is we haven't tested it with something that heavy. In principle, if the mount is designed correctly, if you counterweight it, it should work, but that's a big in principle because it's an actual thing that.
Right. And
So
and it's been adapted from an original design. I think it's Rob Simon is the original designer for it.
The
And
information's in the Discord if they need it.
yeah. And it was basically using his DSLR with I think it was like it was a variable zoom lens, but it wasn't more than 300 millimeters. And it wasn't that particularly heavy, but I would imagine within reason, with the appropriate counterweight, it should support it, but I can't guarantee it.
I have experience with mine. I had a Canon DSLR, 2.3 pounds. Counterweight with water was about little less than that. It was 1.2 pounds, and that did fit on the mount. I was able to slew and track, although I didn't do with the sun, but it did handle that weight. So that's at least a minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, I might have an issue then. My lens is heavier than that.
Yeah, this was a 300 zoom lens
Yes.
on mine. So, but the thing I had to be careful about a little bit is tighten the screw a little bit so it wouldn't move as it's tracking. The camera would have a tendency to move a little bit depending on its orientation. So you have to be careful a little bit.
One thing to remember that if you are counterweighting something, make sure that you're east biased on your counterweights. So the weight of the counter and to the east side of your mount, that the weight is actually is on the east side slightly heavier than it is on the west side, because that makes sure the gears are engaged and you get low slop. So you're sitting on the gears when the gear is moving, it's actually lifting the weight. Because if you don't do that, you get slop and it will move around and you won't get accurate imaging.
I was just fixing to bring up that backlash.
Yeah, so there is, because it's plastic gears, there's a bit of backlash. So east biasing your weight. So if you're aiming south, if your camera's on this side on the mount, the counterweight bar should be slightly imbalanced, not by much, but only a fraction imbalance. So you're resting on the gears, and as it goes past the midpoint, move the weight up slightly. So the weight actually on the camera is heavier because it's on the east side now. So just be aware of that because it gets rid of slop in the gears and gets you better tracking.
Liam, I would say that it doesn't matter whether you're east or west biased. as long as you are biased in one direction.
Well, no,
And
the reason why they say east biased, because
Mhm.
it's lifting the weight. And you want it, the weight the camera is moving, you want the weight to be on opposite the side, the direction the camera is going. So when the camera comes over to the east side, you want the weight to be on the gears, the way the gear is turning. You need to have it in favor. If you go either way, if you don't bias the right direction, you will get a flop as it moves from one to the other, and it won't work.
so I had not completed my sentence.
Oh, I'm
My
sorry.
my sentence was going to say, as long as a totality, the camera and the counterweight are not up and down, but they are near horizontal, so that you are not flopping over a
There's a
totality.
there's a difference between east and west, because on east the motor will be engaged in the gear and pull. If it's the other way, it's the weight. The motor will stop the. Say it will not pull the.
Right. It will stop
it-
the
yeah,
thing from
yeah. So
right.
if the weight is not enough, you can have some wiggle there.
Yeah, you get
Okay.
slop. So
Okay.
yeah, you should east bias it. Any astronomer, anyone who does imaging, they all say you always east bias. And if you do meridian flip and like if you
Yeah,
go past the meridian, you have to move it so you bias the camera once the camera goes over to the east side.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to say something, answer a question out loud to everybody, because I think Hayes noticed that we want your GPS coordinates, and we also want to make sure that your photographs are that your camera has the accurate timing to a second. And so for the GPS coordinates, what we did last time is we had people take pictures. Either they screenshotted their phone with a GPS coordinates on their phone, which is one way, or if you have a GPS that there are GPS devices that connect to a lot of cameras. So I have one of those, so that automatically happens. So those are the two ways that and then you can upload the photograph of your GPS. If you take a screenshot of or a picture, a photograph of your GPS coordinates from an app or something, then you would upload that image along with your photographs. What we do is we take all the information that you give us before you upload the photographs, we turn that into metadata. And we actually make what's called a FITS file, which is a type of astronomical. It's just the way astronomers track what all the information, the important information related to the images are. So we'll be asking you for that information when you're uploading, right before you upload your photos. So that is one way to GPS tag your photos. We'll do the tagging, but if you can at least, you will not have to go in and type your GPS coordinates in your properties of each of your photographs, unless you would like to. I won't stop you.
Spelling is good.
I have a question. Normally for eclipse imaging, altitude is super important because of your contact positions and so on, right? C1, C2, those timings are precise, and your altitude has some play on that because of where you are in the cone of the shadow in the umbra. I have a Garmin GPS on my computer, so it's going to be plugged in to gather that data. Does everybody have to track altitude as well, or do you not care?
Track, what was that? I'm sorry.
Altitude.
Oh, altitude. That's a good question.
Well,
That is
your
a really
altitude-
good question.
Yeah, because the higher up you are, the further into the umbra you are, so the more into the cone of shadow.
Right.
So when the shadow hits you, is going to vary, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's going to play a little bit into it if you have that information. I know for all the contact points and so on, the events during an eclipse, your umbra, your altitude plays a big part, and down to the millisecond timing. for when to trigger stuff for those events. But you only look for totality only, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So,
Could you type that out and we'll make sure to ask our science guys?
okay.
Thank you. I'll copy paste into my big question document.
I mean, in principle, if there's enough topographic maps, we could figure it out, but I think it would be if we have your lat long, but I would prefer
Yeah.
to just have you all give it to us.
Yeah, just in
With
case.
Google, if you have the coordinate, the GPS coordinate, you can find out the altitude also.
Yeah.
It's in
And you mean altitude above sea level as
Yes.
opposed to altitude angle, because where I am,
okay.
it would be 68 degrees as opposed to 220 meters.
Yeah, you're talking about the declination.
Right.
Yeah.
Azimuth altitude as opposed to
Oh, azimuth, yeah.
latitude, longitude, and elevation above sea level.
Yeah.
Right.
As far as GPS goes, we do know that if you put a GPS unit on a camera, it's going to suck the battery dry real quick unless you have a power source on it.
Yep.
So my question is, what's a good, cheap GPS I can plug into my 15-year-old MacBook?
What I use is a USB Garmin 18X. They're not inexpensive.
18X.
18X, yeah, there's about $75 on Amazon. They're not inexpensive, but they're very precise for altitude and GPS coordinates. And the reason why I use it is it's what is recommended by Fred Espernak when he does his imaging of eclipses, because it's very precise, and altitude plays a big part in your contact points and so on, the events. So he recommends that, and that's what he says is super accurate. And you plug into your computer, so the software you use to take the images of the eclipse will actually read that, and it knows down to the millisecond exactly when the events are going to happen and when to trigger the camera shutter.
There's also good application on cell phone.
Mhm.
Like this one is.
I like that Laura said, just take a picture of your phone, which will have the coordinates, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go to the NIST website, time.gov, and also take a picture so that they can get the timing from NIST versus whatever my camera claims it is, which I will try to adjust the night before, but my reaction time with setting the time versus the actual time is not great.
Yeah, so is that just what app is that? I mean, what's it called? Because every phone will have
Boussole. Boussole.
That's a French app. Boussole. That's French for compass.
Yeah, that's it.
So there's my translation for those of you who are not Francophiles.
There are a lot of apps that will take
this one the one I
elevation.
use, but there's other one also. There's longitude, latitude, and altitude also. So and I can use it to polar, not really polar align, but to align to the North Pole.
Right.
It's,
there is
corrected for the magnetic
yes.
declination.
Yeah, this is the one I use. Garmin.
Mm.
And it's called the GPS 18X USB.
Yes. And Hannah, who is kindly editing this Google Docs, I hope she will share it because those of us who have short memory issues will not remember any of this.
Yes, here, I'll post it in the chat, and Dar, you'll see an email from Dar tonight
Thank you.
later with the link to this as well.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, I want to give everyone a time check. It is 4:49, 11 minutes left. Our chat and our Q&A has gotten a little cross-pollinated. I just want to make sure that we keep these clear.
Right.
Post
Some of
very
these I'm
clear-
happy with
Excuse
not
me, sorry,
being.
hi, hold on 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Please post questions in
Yeah.
the Q&A that we can answer very clearly, and it would help other volunteers. So it is written and recorded in a way that it's not lost in the chat. The
Yep.
chat is very hard to read
Mhm.
because people are just typing in, you know,
Right.
at speed. And so, you know, questions get lost. So there
Yep.
are times that I'm asking people privately, make sure that you get a chat off of the chat and into the Q&A, and please make sure not to use the Q&A as the chat, okay? So if you have an answer for someone, please feel free to put it in the chat, and staff is putting it into the Q&A to answer for other people. Okay, so time check, everybody. We've got 10 minutes left, and we're still recording, so let's get the most we can out of this. 10 more
You
minutes.
just asked another question there. I put it in the Q&A. How much time after C2 do you want this sequence to be triggered?
Right. So so I saw also a question about, you know, the concern of if there's a problem taking so everyone needs to remember to take the filter off. If you're taking photographs of the partial, so just for people who haven't taken eclipse photographs before, so the partial eclipses will happen. A lot of you will have a filter on so you don't burn up your camera. And that solar filter will allow you to take those cool partials that you see. Then C1, so C2 is right before basically where the diamond rings are, meaning it's about to go to totality. So if it's not going to burn up your camera, we are happy to get some C2 pictures. So I know a lot of people are able to take those. And so if you want to take off your filters right at the diamond ring and start taking pictures, that would be great. But then also you need to consider the sequencing at that point, because our sequence starts, you know, seconds after C2 ends, like when there are no more beads.
After Bailey's beads, okay.
Yeah, so what we are just thinking about after Bailey's beads, but we are interested in getting your Bailey beads because there's the Sunsketcher team who was part of Eclipse Megamovie before. They're the mobile app version, and their science is looking at the size of the sun, and they're using the Bailey's beads to do that. And so they asked, if we get any Bailey's beads, can we give those to them, please? And I said I would. And then we're getting other images from like the telescope team, because they'll have the jets as they leave. And so we're all coordinating, and all the data is open source and such, but yeah.
Okay. I have a couple questions still unanswered in this document. Keith asks, Nina does not connect to my Canon EOS R. It does connect to my Canon 6D. Where can I get help? So forums, what do you guys say?
Nina forums. Yeah, go to Nina, go to their forums and ask questions there. It may not be a supported camera. They have a list of what they support. And actually they have a Discord. Yeah, John just mentioned there. They have a Discord. So on their Discord would be a good place to ask questions. If they have a driver for it, they'll support it, but they may not, but that's the place to ask.
Okay. And then another question I saw, if I was planning on using a refractor, fixed focal length, fixed aperture, rather than a camera lens, can I simply calculate the equivalent shutter speeds to match the gold standard as closely as possible? Will they still be able to submit their images and participate in the project is what I'm wondering.
Yes.
Okay.
Short summary is yes. If you know how to calculate equivalent exposures, then with your setup, you should do that.
Excellent. Okay. Keith also asks, can one use Nina to control only the camera and not something
Yes,
else?
I believe so, yes. You can
Yes.
tell it not to attach to any mount, or not to look at a mount, and just to connect to a camera.
just the camera, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm not sure if anyone answered Jenny's question about How is it intended that we balance moving actual weights? The 3D mount doesn't have a clutch to release. Have we answered that?
Uh,
I'm not sure what the question was.
I'm just reading it from the Q&A from Denny.
Yam answered that.
Is
Oh,
answered?
the-
Okay, fantastic.
I didn't see an answer.
Yam answered that.
You know what I do? I just pull that little gear off and move the arm and put the little gear back on.
I was hoping not to disassemble anything. My best thought was to stick a screwdriver down the shaft and lift it up a little bit, but I was hoping there was a better choice.
Spencer, I'm writing your answer into the
You-
Q&A.
I know, Jeffrey, do you have another answer? Is that the answer?
You mean to freehand rotate it?
Yeah,
Like
basically you have to lift it up, right? So that you can see if it balances and move a weight along the shaft.
Well, you
That's the
can
way you do
slew
it
it.
with a
You have the
with
slew
a
buttons.
normal mount.
Yeah, but you can use a switch to slew it.
Yeah, you can kind of go back and forth with the switch.
Now the switch
Yeah,
doesn't help at all. You have to lift it up so you can watch it so you can watch it
Oh,
balance.
you mean? Oh, yeah. I would see. Here's what I do, right? Without the gear on, balance it and put marks on it for both east and west, and put a little mark on the threaded bar to show which one is which, with a black marker, right? A permanent marker. So then you know where balance is with the gear off, and then so you know before you even get there where our balance points are. And then when you get there, you can actually use those by sliding the weight to the right spot.
Yeah, I just don't want to take the thing apart.
Well, I understand what you mean, but yeah, that's the only way to balance it is to take one of the gears out, the small gear that's pushed on, pop it off, balance it, and put marks on the threaded bar where the balance points are, where you need to put everything. And then after that, then when you put it back together again, you have your balance points already. You just have to move the weight to that right point.
Like I said, you can shove a right size screwdriver through the shaft, and you'll be there at the center and lift it up a bit and play with it. I just was looking for a little better solution.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they are 3D printed.
It's not nanotechnology. I just put it out in the daytime at a time
can't do
near
that.
when totality is would be. Put a filter in your camera, see how well it tracks, and if it's good enough, you're done.
Yeah. All kinds of different approaches and different answers to questions, and
Can I
I
make a
do want to say
suggestion?
we're a mix of high tech and lo-fi, so that's
Yeah.
always
Can I make
the
a
next
suggestion?
way. All right, I want to do a time check, everyone. It is 4:57.
Can I make a
And we
suggestion on
want
that
to,
balancing?
sure,
I'm sorry?
Robert, and then that'll be the last comment.
Okay, and then
Okay.
we need to stop
There's a
recording
set
this
screw,
one
there's a,
and roll it over for the next one.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
There's a
go
set
ahead,
screw up
Robert.
on,
Yeah,
there's
last
a
one.
set screw up on the top of that where you don't have to take the gears off. Just make sure that the gear doesn't slip out when you're trying to free balance that. I know on like more expensive mounts that it has that free balance to where you can actually weight the weight on the one side versus the camera or the telescope. But if you just undo that set screw up on the top, that would let that free spin. And then once you're done, got your balance exactly where you want it, then you just tighten the set screw back up. But as you're doing that, just make sure that the shaft doesn't slide out so that everything falls off. That's my suggestion. Sorry.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. Okay, everyone. I think what we need to do is we need to close up the office hours. And we're going to roll over the Q&A for the training. And we're going to start re-recording the Zoom. And I just want to remind, I'll make a new announcement. So Give me 1 second. I'm going to stop this.